Hello and welcome to Systemize Your Success. Today I'm joined by Georges Verdis and his operations manager, Grace Barrow, who is based in the Philippines. Georges is a now frequent guest on the show. I think it's been about your third time on here. And today is a real special one for me. And it's because of a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. Now, just to give you a little very quick backstory, me and Georges met a couple of years ago. And at the time, he had a purely UK-based team. He runs a high-end London-based estate agency. And he came to me with this challenge that one of his key members of staff, his office manager, was leaving. And he wanted to systemize that role in order to replace her without things going wrong, should we say. And so I helped him do that. We created systems around her role. We did that in the 6-week window we had before she left. And we did it so well that we're able to systemize pretty much everything she did. And I encouraged Georges to look further afield to actually replace her in her role. And we ended up hiring Grace as that replacement, who, as I mentioned before, is based in the Philippines. And the reasons I encourage Georges to do that is I've had fantastic experience of working with overseas workers and primarily from the Philippines. And we're going to get into, I think, as we go through this conversation, the reasons why that has been so successful. And I wanted to showcase really Georges' story today because he went to visit his entire team. He's now got a majority of his team is now in the Philippines, and he went to visit them all a couple of weeks ago and had some incredible insights, some fabulous experiences about going out there and actually meeting them in person, seeing the world from their eyes for the first time, face to face and in person. And I really want to share this. I think it was a fabulous conversation we had, and I felt that it would benefit everybody else. So welcome to both of you. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success.
Thank you very much.
Cool. So there is no script to this, as I mentioned as we were warming up for this interview. So this is an opportunity really for us to just have a chat about your experiences, about you working together with people from the Philippines. Grace, what it's like for you maybe working for a UK or a UK-based company, what differences maybe that it would be, or what differences that has made in your life and what you see, maybe your colleagues or friends and people that aren't doing that, and whether that's a plus or minus, and maybe there's pros and cons of both. And Georges, from your side, like maybe discussing why you've continued to grow your Filipino team, and I know that this is something you intend to continue to do more in the future. And so that good place to start then. Tell us, Georges, your experience of maybe before taking this leap of faith, and then afterwards, and what were your initial experiences and how has that continued as the years have gone on?
Okay, thank you, Steve. So, just you sharing, when my office manager stroke property manager, tenancy progressor left, that was she handed me in her notice on the 1st of March, 2021. And that's when you jumped into the rescue because we were already working together. And you told me, well, this is what needs to be done so that you can continue supporting and delivering what you promised to your clients. Of course, the big challenge for me was the fact that you were insisting that you should really be looking overseas, and specifically in the Philippines. And maybe you do know, maybe you don't. I did have the opportunity of working with some other team members in the Philippines. However, what I can categorically say is the quality of the work. So let me just put things into perspective. Currently, I've got 55% of my team working in the Philippines. They work UK hours. They have direct access to my clients. They speak with my clients. They service my clients. They provide solutions to my clients. And if I go back to before 2021, I did have 2 virtual assistants, one working full-time, one part-time, but they were kind of hidden, as if no one knew about them, as no contact whatsoever with our client base, working their local times, which in other words means that they are 7 hours ahead. So around midday, you know, they were my midday, sorry, not their midday, my midday, they were clocking off. And to go from that mindset to the mindset of today, or at least specifically March 2021, George, I think you should use, my recruit right system to hire your next hire. Having, I mean, they were good. They were good virtual assistants, but I could just never see how they could possibly deal with a more responsible, a higher level type of job with absolutely very big implications if things didn't go right with my clients. So moving forward, a couple of weeks later, I do follow your recruit right system, and Grace pops up on the screen in terms of, there I am having a one-to-one interview with her. And, it was very much according to your, or at least what I also thought were the right selection criteria, because we did have a lot of applications. Grace knows this. I mean, Grace, what was it like for you? Just the hiring before we even got to working together.
I guess what basically enticed me to apply was with the job post alone. It's very detailed on what team I will be joining with, and apart from the description of the job, there's also a little bit of a challenge in putting all of the information that was required and answering the I think that's a personality test that we've gone through. And while I was doing it, I was thinking that maybe this is someone, or maybe this organization really wanted someone that would matter in the long run. So it's this is how it's being done. So the applicants will be filtered properly, and so I finished the application. I then received the task and followed every single instruction that was in it, and then provided the a synchronous interview as well, the video. And there I was. I received the invitation for a final interview, and I spoke to George. That was the beginning of it.
Of course, the irony of it all is the assessment, shall we say, was not my assessment. It was Steve's assessment.
Yes.
Even I remember very, very well, because we talked about it. The video when we were asking you about answering, a couple of questions, that was not my video. That was Steve's video.
Yes.
So it must have felt very interesting, the fact that a different person showed up whose name is not Steve.
Yes.
And I think, moving forward from that experience, Steve, from the hiring process and knowing what you should say, do, and select and recruit the team member. It wasn't long when, and by the way, Grace had absolutely zero, did I say zero? Yes, experience in tenancy administration, because that was initially your role.
Yes.
Didn't have any legal background or UK legal background or anything of that matter. However, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Grace, you did have a great quantity of videos, definitely not operation manuals at that stage, I think, but videos on how to carry out the tasks that you were meant to do as you were progressing.
Yes, and the Asana task templates that were already formed during that time. No operations manual just yet, but all of them have videos. So by then we started the rest of the operations manual.
And I think what was interesting, Steve, is as I was, it wasn't just me, it was actually the rest of the team, because they had to follow my leap of faith. Our tenancy progressor is now in the Philippines. Oh, and by the way, she doesn't know anything, but she's got the right ingredients to be able to help you all do your job better and, take away a very big chunk of your workload. So I think, you very quickly know when you have an A player in your team, because I think it was 6 months down the line. Am I right, Grace?
Yes, 6 months.
Yeah. So 6 months down the line, things were going brilliantly well. And then I said to Grace, do you want to be a tenancy progressor for the rest of your life? She goes, no. I'm like, great. You're firing yourself from that position. Grace was delighted. Everybody else here in the UK was absolutely thinking, oh my God, something happened to George. Why would he want to do this when everything is working brilliantly well? 6 months down the line, why does he want to take her away? But I think the biggest insight was the fact that the second time around, I didn't do the hiring.
Yes.
It was Grace. And not only did she do the hiring, but Grace actually gave me a positive, constructive feedback of where I didn't do things right, which was very insightful for me, because that also shows you, our strengths and weaknesses. So if we have to move 6 months, that was back in November, am I right? November 20.
The end of October 2021.
Yes, end of October 2021. So Grace does the recruit right system, creates everything, because now she's hiring for her own position. And you put the advert, and Grace, you take it over. What happened next?
Yes, it was, I realized that how George did it was a little bit different, or I immediately thought that it was in a very quick paced hiring. I think the what do you call it, the desperation was there, because it was done like in a very, very short time. I know it's just an 8-day recruitment for the recruit right system, and but yeah, how it was done was I think it compressed to just several days, and people were called. And when I did it, it was a little bit. I thought, oh, this is how I was interviewed, or how I got the test task. So when I did it myself, I was looking into the systems and like, oh, this is a really good system to have, because it's very easy for me as soon as we get all the applicants, all of the how it's being screened or filtered is already there, and I just need to check few items, and there's a point basis to how we would take applicants to each of the stages, and it was fun. It wasn't that difficult at all. And when we reached the stage where we have to interview, we only I think we had 3 at the time. Correct, and then we chose Leica.
Yeah,
yes.
And then Leica joined us. So now suddenly there is 2 of them in the Philippines, and the rest of us here. And I can keep on going on, but today there is 5 of us in the Philippines. And I think it's important when you hear me, I say 5 of us. I don't say 5 of them. It's 5 of us in the Philippines, 4 of us here currently looking to actually hire somebody else as well in the UK at this moment. And it's a variety of roles, and very important roles. So Grace, when she handed over her position of the tenancy progressor, moved into operations, and very much with your help, process pipelines,
Yes.
it's endless. It's an endless list. Leica was in the tenancy progressor, but then she became sort of, a manager in that position and hired an assistant. Today we have got a tenancy progressor. We've got an operations assistant and marketing assistant. We've got an inbound and outbound sales agent. We've got a property manager in the Philippines, and we have an operations manager. So, you know, and this is literally since April 2021. So if you're listening to this podcast, we're talking about 2 years and a couple of months later. A lot of things can happen in 2 years and a couple of months later. Some people get married. And this is actually what happened. Not to Grace, to Ratius, because Ratius announces to us that, you know, hello everyone, you know, I just got engaged, then I'm soon gonna get married. And George, being George, kind of said, great, let me know the date, I'll come over. So, you know,
Self-invited himself.
Completely self-invited myself. Huh? And Rachel didn't say anything. She kind of went along with it. But then at some point I realized what I did. I'm like, you know, are you really sure you're okay with that? But I saw that as a great opportunity to get an insight into what it's like to be living in the Philippines and working for a UK company. You know, what can you do, and what makes an A player in the Philippines be so amazing? Just really, you know, is it the water they drink, the air that they breathe, or the rice that they eat? You know, what is it? And I think, you know, I said yes, you know, I'm coming over, and I knew where the Philippines is because my geography it's pretty good. Google Maps, thank you. But I guess I never truly understood how far it is until I got on the plane, because, you know, it's all right to book a flight and you can see the connections and it takes, you know, 8.5 hours there, 9.5 there, but that's just numbers. It was very much, you know, when you got on the plane and you realize, oh, okay, this is going to be a long flight. And, you know, looking back today, that was one of those memorable trips that you take. You know, flying over.
Before we jump into that trip, which obviously that's the main event of this show, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that you've mentioned as you've been talking. And these are, I think, for many people, huge barriers or huge misunderstandings or fears that they have about working with remote teams. It doesn't matter if they're from the Philippines, they're from Europe, they're from South Africa, South America, India. I've worked with people all these places. And some of those barriers are, firstly, from a point of view, which I know that some of my friends and family even have joked about this concept of you're creating a sweatshop, because the horrible connotations that, or the image that people have about big corporations that employ people from other nations where the work is so unsecure that people are desperate for a regular income, and they're willing to then work for ridiculous hours, a ridiculously low amount of money, just to be able to put food on the table and provide a very, very basic standard of living for themselves and their family. And as soon as, you know, I think things are changing now, thankfully. I've been doing this for quite a few years now, but definitely in the early days, there's a lot of fear around that. And I did a lot of research because of that into what is a fair wage? What does it actually mean if I pay someone X number of dollars? What does that equate to in local job terms? Like, what kind of role would they need to have in a locally based company? At what level? You know, whether they're an office person, a doctor, a solicitor, you know, whatever they're doing, like, what does it actually look like in true relative terms? And so a lot of work went into that. And before I started recommending, you know, starting wages and what I suggest you should put people on. I know that you followed roughly my guidelines, you know, maybe you did a little bit more or less and benefits or whatever, but roughly, roughly the same. And so we can discuss what you actually found out about that when you went over there and actually in person, which would be, I think, quite interesting as well. But I think that's one thing that's worth just mentioning as people are listening to this, is that is not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about working with people from the Philippines because it's cheap.
No.
Now, it may be a benefit to a Western-based country to work with a employees are based in countries where the cost of living is less, because then relatively speaking, you can pay less for wages and they get the same standard of quality of life. And if I just flip it around, because people still struggle with this, think, oh yeah, but you're just saying that, Steve. If I lived in Switzerland and I was employing someone from the UK, and I try to, sorry, if I live in Switzerland and paying someone from the UK, if I paid them the same wage they would get if they lived in Switzerland, they would be living like a king.
Yeah.
But similarly, if someone from the UK flew over to, or let's say, isn't someone from Switzerland tried to remote work to the UK and got paid a UK wage, they couldn't afford to live.
Correct.
So it's always relative. And
Yes.
I think you've got to try to get this mindset out of, as long as we're giving people, when we employ them from whatever country they live in, if it's more or less than what our current standard of living is in our cost of living is in our country, then it's fine as long as it meets their requirements in their home country. And it may be actually to get somebody who lives in somewhere like Switzerland, you need to actually pay them more. Otherwise, no one's going to be even interested because they get paid more doing something a lot easier. And so that is one of the big things I had to overcome, because I was worried about it. People joking about it, you laugh it off. But actually, it is a real deep concern, and I don't want to be seen like that or have that on my moral plate, so to speak. So I think that's something that really a massive barrier that most people need to overcome. And the second thing is, like, when we're talking about here, you talking about what is it in the water they drink or the rice they eat or whatever, the food they eat, and I think that what I've experienced is that, I don't know if it's complacency, I don't know what the reason is, but I think that with people, like when I hear a lot of, I've never really employed people. Have I employed someone from the UK? Not for many years, not in my recent life. But I hear a lot from my clients. I've got hundreds of clients with staff both in the UK and the Philippines, and it's more challenging from what I understand to find people who really actually care about their job, and actually really want to do well. They want to progress. They want to succeed. There's a loyalty there of and a caring for colleagues, yeah, but also about the success of the business, because I think they see that. I don't know, Grace, if you can come in on your thoughts. Is this a cultural thing? It's like, why is that? Why do we, from your side, why do you think we see that difference?
I think it is somehow cultural. We normally, or I think it has been normalized, but we do think about the tenure. I mean, we always have that mindset of, because someone's tenured, we have to follow the lead and make sure that we everything that we are seeing from from the tenured ones, we wanted to take that step as well. So what we normally do is to follow everything. We're like we were, I think someone said this before, I maybe hated saying this, but it's like Filipinos are have this yes can do, which is somehow others would think that it's not a good thing. The Westerners would not want, or would not want like immediately, until they hear what that yes can do attitude is. And basically, because we say yes to everything, we don't even complain. We don't even want to complain. There might be complaints, but we keep it to ourselves and then just work on it. We gather resources, make sure we do everything correctly and promptly as well. Now, when it comes to people thinking about our loyalty does not just reside to someone who's paying us. It also I think is coming from when we're being valued. We're being valued, and we get to reap the benefits of working. I think efficiently. It's because we think that our work is being appreciated, valued for. So we also give back. So that's, I think, where our loyalty comes from.
So is it more? So is it that it's not actually something inherent with you can't say everybody from our nation is the same as everybody else anyway, but maybe it's something that's actually, it's a combining factors, if you like. So the fact that the your culture is the way that you appreciate when you are being valued highly, then when I mean, myself, and I know George is like this, we massively value and try to make that very clear how important the roles are for everybody and all of our stuff, wherever they're based. And it's that combination that actually really works. Do you think that's a fair assumption, or?
Yes, and add a little bit of a training. You know, this discipline. I suppose we call it discipline when it comes to working. I mean, I haven't tried working in a local based corporate office here in the Philippines. I never had the chance because, like what I told George when he came here, when you don't have a degree, it's very difficult for you to get into a corporate job. And I don't have a degree, so I never tried that. The first corporate job that I have tried, or I guess the corporate job, we call that now a corporate job, is a call center, the call centers in the Philippines. And when we joined, when you join a call center, you would be trained not just the language, you would also be trained discipline, time management, all of these things. So those combined, I guess you would, eventually, working for like how many, I think I was working for 8 years, and all of whatever I was trained in the call center, I brought that into the work from home or the remote work, and it's basically working well for me. So I guess those combinations did have a good impact.
Good. Cool. Okay.
Can I
yeah,
I think it was a very good point, Steve. You know, why did we choose to work with the Philippines? Is it the fact that it's the cost of labor is cheaper? I'm going to be very controversial. If my team in the Philippines decided, you know what, we're leaving the Philippines, we're coming over to London and live in London, I will give them the same job at the equivalent UK rate because they are so good. Because ultimately, this is also what happens, with Filipino nurses that are coming from the Philippines with incredible amount of experience over to the UK, to support, because there's not enough of them here. There's not enough nurses. I mean, and I know this because, I have relatives that are still in the NHS. And yes, they get a much, much bigger wage, but there are some major drawbacks. You've just completely removed them from their personal circle of friends and family. Yes, they make more money, but their cost of living has gone up. The reason why they've decided to emigrate and relocate to the UK is because they want to send monies back. And I understood that whilst I was there, how important that is. And, it's like they're so good at what they do. Why? It's not the cost savings. I mean, I was very recently, I did this with everyone in the team. I actually offered them 2.5 times their monthly salary to ask them to leave in 7 days. I made the same offer to Grace, like everybody in the team. 2.5 times your salary and you can leave. And they say, are you firing me? I'm like, no, but I'm giving you the opportunity to have 2.5. Now, here's the irony of it. They're not an employee of mine. It's just a contractor's, sort of type of agreement. And yet I'm here because, contribution is very important for us as a value in the team. So, they don't get treated any differently to anybody here in the UK. They have the same amount of holidays, same amount of sick pay, same amount of benefits, same amount of training, same amount of everything. So, whenever people say, well, the only reason why you went there is because it's cheap. No, it's because they're brilliant.
I would actually come in and be slightly controversial as well. In
Great.
that I definitely went there because initially it was an affordable rate that at the stage in business when I first looked for help and desperately needed help because I was drowning, I simply could not afford to hire somebody at the caliber that I required in the UK to help me. And the only way I could get somebody competent enough who was going to stick around, because if I did manage to find someone who was undervaluing themselves in the UK who was absolutely brilliant, they're probably going to be wanting, you know, significant pay rises quite quickly, or they're going to go and get snapped up by somebody else. And so by going to a country like the Philippines, I was able to find somebody good and then reward them at a rate that they deserved based on the work they were doing for me that was relative to where they lived. And so for me, that was the why. Now, as you just alluded to, Georges, like once your company starts making more money and you could afford to actually pay that person a UK or USA, whatever rate, would I then, if the options were lose that person or bring them over here and pay them a full rate, would I choose, which one I'd choose? Of course, I would happily pay them, if they wanted to come to the UK like that, I'd make it work because I wouldn't want to lose somebody that was that good. So I think it's maybe a chicken egg, that's a wrong expression, but it's like, why did I start doing it? If I'm really honest, it was the money. Why did I continue doing it? I'm now so passionate about it. And why we're having this conversation now, it's because of everything else. So, yeah.
Interestingly enough, I don't think I did it for the money. I did it because you told me to do it.
Yeah. Your business was at a different, much further on stage when we were talking than I was when I first ever hired somebody. The first time I hired somebody, I had the first ever person I hired remotely was actually from India, through an agency. I had 10 hours a month on contract, and I never ever managed to use all 10. And so, and that was, I can't remember what rate, that's about $10 an hour or something like that. And yeah, so that was when I first ever started. And obviously things have evolved since then, and we've been up to like 14 full-time members in our remote teams over the years. And so, yeah, I've experienced it from different sides, I guess. But yeah, you're right. Good. Well, thank you for having faith in me. Let's jump.
That's not far from the truth, though, Steve. The call centers were built in the Philippines because the pay. It's the amount of pay that the amount of money that investors will be able to save when hiring people. And English is our second language, so that's the second thing. But it's not very difficult to teach us when it comes to the language, so the barrier isn't that high when it comes to the language. And when you said that the starting pay is basically very, very you can say that it's low, but for us it was not. It was I guess it was already above the basic wage that we were receiving as a local corporate offices receive. Employees received. It's way different. So when you said that it wasn't, I wouldn't even say that it's. We're thankful. We're thankful that everyone came in, especially the remote work, because not everyone can. Since the centers are now being built in the major cities and the traffic is just. It's very slow. The movements are very slow. You have to get ready 2 hours prior, 2 hours after as well before you can go home. So when the remote work it has started, we then we found a place where we can transition to without spending these much of hours outside. And not everyone loves to do it, like being at home, because the social life, they would still want the social life and work and life balance. But as long as we as a remote worker, we find ways on how we can balance all of these. And every organization, not every organization, but the organizations that I have joined now are basically making sure that even if you're working remote, you should also value health and family. So that's our core value now. But yeah, so we still make sure that we prioritize our life. Balance the work life as well.
Thank you, Grace. Cool. Okay, well, let's keep on that track because I think it's thank you for sharing that. I think going back to the reason I really kicked off this interview or asked you to come on this show was because of both your experiences of Georges coming over to visit you, Grace, and I was sent this a very nice video.
Yes, I do remember that.
Georges and Grace,
Yeah,
and quite shocked by the height difference because everyone's always sat down. And, George is quite tall.
He was
chap.
crouching.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my wife always jokes about it because she works for one of the big banks, and during COVID she'd meet loads of team members and they'd all be sat on Zoom. And then post-COVID, she'd be meeting people in the office, and their body shape would be completely unknown to her. So were they a big person, a little person? Were they tall? Were they short? And so it's just like, do I know you? You know, and it's just sort of like it was very nice to see. So there's some of the fun things about working remotely, but I think that this can't take anything away. And I haven't done this yet, so I hold my hat off you, Georges, for going out and visiting a team, because if we were based in the UK, if everybody was here, even if we were working remotely, we would get together and you would meet a person and you would, be able to hold their hand, I mean, like shake them by the hand, sorry, or and actually have physical contact with somebody and actually look them like directly in the eye and not through a digital manipulated lens with some filter on or whatever,
Yeah.
And so what was that like? Like, what did you gain from doing that? And I know you massively, you came back beaming is what I'm trying to say from that experience. And you came into our first group, one of my elite mastermind session, you were just like beaming and like you took the floor for like 30 minutes and just
Typical George.
And that's what prompted me to book this. So share some of that experience with us and why you felt it was such a fabulous thing to do.
So, after a long flight, you're very excited about actually meeting each team member because, yes, the excuse was Rachel's wedding, but what we had all agreed was that then we're all going to be spending after the wedding time together doing activities.
On her honeymoon, yeah.
On her honeymoon, yes. Yeah, if you said it, yes, we basically even hijacked their honeymoon. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, Rachel. But ultimately, even here in the UK, we have a monthly sort of team event together. Not possibly right now, which is our busiest period, but normally we have a monthly team event. So first of all, I met Grace and her partner. They welcomed me in Cebu. Of course, Grace missed me because I was too tall and basically she couldn't see my face because they had frosted the glass as you were coming out of the airport. And the first thing she told me is, don't you ever come close to me, because you could immediately understand the difference. Now I get it.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Greece, so and there's a lot of Filipinos in Greece, and I could see a lot of things that we have in common. So the public infrastructure is not as good as our own homes. So the internal of our homes is better than the public, what is out in the street. And immediately you could see that there straight away. I was shocked by the cost of living. I was surprised. At some point I was like, no, they've made a mistake. We can't have paid all of this for breakfast. All of us eating a lot of food, in a good place. And I'm like, Grace, she goes, no, that's normal. I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, hold on a second. I paid exactly the same amount of money for sushi and I ate a lot of sushi. I was actually dreading the bill and then I realized it. So, that's the other thing. I think the biggest jump or insight is I always say yes to things and then I'm like, I'll work it out along the way. As I was on the plane, I was thinking to myself, it's all well and good that we all work together, but we work virtually. What if we don't get on with each other? Because we're going to be spending some time together. And Grace, being, you need to get value for money for everything you do, she jam-packed our calendar so much that we had to cancel something because we were like, we won't make it. So one of my biggest concerns and fears was, what if we don't get on? What if after this trip, some people will say, I'm out? And we were literally, I mean, we did this at the end of June, and we're now entering our busy period for lettings, that is. So that was a very big kind of concern or worry about me. But I think the fact that all of us were kind of meeting not in common territory, I think that's what made it very interesting. So, you know, Laika, Maria, and Christine were kind of close to Manila, and they had to fly to meet us in Botswana. We met with Grace, with our partners in Cebu, and we had to fly there. So it was kind of like a reunion or getting together. And of course, you know, there is the, you know, you kind of feel weird when you meet them. I mean, you know, you want to hug them and say, oh, it's you, it's really you, you really do exist. You know, you do sound the same. You definitely don't look the same in terms of physical, you know, on Zoom. Yes. I mean, you know, the biggest joke was Maria, because Maria, I don't know how she does it, but her Zoom makes her look so short, and she was the tallest. I'm like, Maria, I swear to God, I did not believe that you were so tall. So, you know, and I think, you know, just getting to know each other and also being at a very important event in somebody's life and actually sitting together on a table, you kind of realize, wow, you know, this is really unique and special. And it's only been, for the longest team member, that's Grace, 2 years and a bit. For others, it's less than 2 years. For others, it's less than a year.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're just sitting there and you want to be part of it. I mean, from a Filipino culture, the other thing that I can say is, like, it was very clear that I was the Westerner, that, you know, from any perspective.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. On that note, Georges, Grace, what was it like having your boss fly over? What was your experience of it?
I mean, the moment I saw Georges, I couldn't see him. Like what he said, I couldn't see him because he was like taller than the glass window. But when he came out, I looked at him, and he was so tall. Like for an average, I think Filipino people, I think, I mean, average, I think 5'7", or I think is the average that I could say is correct. But when George came out, and he was like, he's just gleaming with like excitement as well, like, oh, there you are. And I was like, yes, but you don't even come near me, because look at us. I mean, I'm like just your waist, you're up until your waist because you're so tall. But I was very happy to see Georges, that I know he traveled for like 19 hours in total, including the stops. And even though it was a very tiring trip, when he came out of the airport, he was like all smiles, and you know, handshaked and said hello. And when we were in the cab going to the hotel, it feels like we're just in Zoom still, because I mean, he's still asking. I mean, but this time it's not about work. It's about how, I mean, how everything is going economic wise in the Philippines. So because we had to go through the road that we went through was like, and the highway that we should be going through was closed, so we had to go to the slum area, the small road. And George seen it all, like the slums, and he was like, oh, so this is how it is. What about the healthcare? What about all of that? I had to tell him how's life in the Philippines, especially in that area, and how that's why when we are working, I mean, what we are getting from just even though people would frown upon being a call center agent or something, it still gives us the benefit, so we don't care really. And George was like seeing all of it.
Great. Let me just touch on that for a second, just to explain the background behind that, because I think that was one of the most poignant things that when Georges and I had a conversation about this, was about that point you just made. And that was that actually for, you said that huge numbers of people, I presume it's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people work in call centers. And I know you guys had a conversation about this, and some of the things that came up, and this was not to tell the whole story for you, but just to remind you, really, you were staying in a hotel, Georges, that overlooked the call center district.
So,
and you mentioned things about, you talked about culture, job prospects, holidays, wages, ZTP. Can you just explain a little bit about this? And maybe from both of your sides, Grace, because it would have come from you originally, I think, a lot of this stuff. So, yeah.
So, whenever I go and visit a new country, I'm just curious. I just want to know everything. And I'm not the type of person that I want to read it from a book, because that's one perspective. I actually want to live it. So I had told Grace, look, when I land, I will be asking you loads of questions. So make sure you have Panadols or paracetamol, sorry, because there will be loads of questions. I definitely gave her loads of questions, like nonstop. I didn't, the slums and everything. Okay, that's one aspect, but I was more curious to find out, what was happening behind, and this is going to sound so weird. The kids were happy. They were playing. But coming back, so there is one aspect. On my first day, we drive through the slums. And one of the deals that I had done with my wife is like, I'm not going to talk about work. So all the questions, we were not going to talk about work. Oh, and by the way, just to make it clear, I took my whole team from the Philippines out of action, no work, whilst the UK team continued their work. Not very popular, but but it just shows you how important they are. So we're not going to talk about work. So I was asking loads and loads of questions, and we end up, I think it was the last 2 nights of our trip. My hotel booking got slightly messed up. I was in a nice hotel, which the whole team was meant to be joining me on the last night. Grace tells me, big thing, I don't know what happened. They've messed up the booking. I need to find you another hotel. I'm like, great, I'm sleeping in the same hotel as you are. Well, George, I'm not sure. I'm like, I'm sleeping in the same hotel as you are. Well, George, there might be cockroaches. I'm like, great, I'll have some fun with them. Now, I'm so glad that happened, because probably that is one of the biggest highlights for me. We were in Cebu. It's called IT Park. And the moment you drive in, you understand, hold on a second, this is different. This is very different to the rest of what I've been seeing, because you can see big towers, all the chains, nice roads, life in the middle of the night. We arrived at 11:30, life, and loads of young people. So I was like to Grace, what is this? Oh, she goes, this is IT Park. I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice. What's here? She goes, this is where all the call centers are. I'm like, call centers? She goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. As we were driving past, because, until we find that hotel, I even saw JP Morgan. I said, wow, great, you have JP Morgan here. We've got the same thing in our city, in the financial center. She goes, George, that's not JP Morgan, the bank. I'm like, oh, what is it? She goes, that's JP Morgan, the call center. I'm like, okay. Now, by pure coincidence, 4 of my team members have got call center background or previous experience, name it whatever you want. And, I was hearing acronyms such as ZTP. So, I was like, oh, yeah, ZTP, that's not a great thing. I was like, ZTP, and you try to be savvy or smart. And I was like, is that the Zoiper software? She goes, no. That's a zero tolerance policy. I'm like, okay, explain to me. So she shared with me her insights, because she also worked in one of these call centers, that if you go off script by one word, zero tolerance policy, you're out. You're literally out. I was like, okay. And then I said, oh, I'm sure things must have been definitely getting better, since you left that industry. She goes, yeah. I'm like, you see, I knew. She goes, for the employer. I'm like, what? She goes, it's for the employer. I was like, okay. And then I was hearing the taboos, the impact that it has got on all of these, everyone that works in that call center. And just to put things into perspective, because we're talking a tower, like a proper tower, parkings in the first few floors, and then you literally see lights in the middle of the night, 11 o'clock at night, packed. They are packed. So then I'm starting to ask more questions. So why are they still here? Well, they are call centers. For who? Well, it's for US and Canada. I'm like, oh, okay. They're 12 hours ahead. So we start at 9. We finish at 6. Or even worse, if it's Pacific time, is that the worst one? I
12,
can't know.
12 midnight until
till
8
8
8 or
a.m.
1. Yeah, 8 or 9.
Isn't it interesting that Grace says 8 to 1 instead of 8? It sounds like, okay. So suddenly, from the moment that I was admiring where I was in the area that I was in, I actually felt disgusted. And it's a very strong word that I'm using. I felt disgusted because of the working conditions. I don't know what it's like to have a zero tolerance policy. I've never heard of that before in my life.
Grace, would you be willing to just share your experience or what you know from friends and colleagues that have worked in those sort of sectors or still work there? Like, what is the culture like and the prospects, and what's the day-to-day work like for the majority of people working in the Philippines in that sort of job?
Currently, what I've had, now a few relatives that are also joining the call center. The young ones are now slowly joining the call centers. It's basically in the Philippines, when once you graduate and you got your degree, it's very difficult to get a corporate job without an experience, and it's a very a chicken and egg problem, because you can't get in when you don't have an experience, and even if you have an experience and you don't have a degree, you still could not come in. So it's that kind. So some people would start at a call center, get an experience there, and bring it forth to corporate, another or a local based corporate offices. But when working in a call center, it's basically, I started as a customer. I started as a collections agent for a US company. And it's not basically collections, but it was skip tracing. So I did all of the skip tracing. I'm basically the snitch for all of the people who were like running from their debts, and I was that person. And eventually, I moved to a customer service because I think the snitching part was very difficult for me. So I went to a customer service, and it wasn't that bad initially, I would say, because I was a night person anyway. So I'm used to being awake at night and asleep during the day. But eventually, it will be your health that will catch on, and so you would want to look for a different job that would that would allow you to work during your daytime. So there are also call centers for Australian company, which is basically the same time as the Philippines. So it is a good job because you are working the normal hours. That's better. But still, the culture inside the culture inside the centers are quite difficult. Not difficult, I would say. It's very strict. There's always a memo for everything. So say the ZTP, the zero tolerance policy. It basically starts with, if you forget or if you verify the number yourself, not the customer, you would be marked this. There's a point basis or there's a point system. So it's quite toxic in the long run. And not everyone gets the chance to be promoted as well. And it's a very fast-paced environment, I would say. And you would be there like 8 hours on the phones, and the queue are just, it's just technically like 100. If it's like a short calls, like 3-4 minutes, that's 100 over calls in a night. And you would not just I mean, you would be receiving calls from, I mean, there are nice people, but there are also already upset callers. So you would be the sponge to all of these disappointment calls. So you will be receiving all of them, and then you go home. Sometimes I mean, I guess the reason why there are a lot of pubs outside the call centers are because once the shift is done, every one of you will go there to just vent out, drink your heart out. That's it, and move on to the next day. And that was the main thing that I think I was already at the end of like I cannot see myself doing this forever. I need to do something else that I think, I don't have to travel 4 hours. I mean, that wouldn't take my 4 hours every day just for travel. And I wanted to be, still at home with my family, because I had to move to the city, and I'm from a smaller town somewhere south. So I had to move because the opportunity is just in the city. So when I decided to work from home or start remote working, I went back home, and I am with family. So that's minus one of the toxicity of being in a corporate or in a call center. And that just, I mean, everything started. So in the call center, your education is stagnant. So the tendency is you have to, I mean, if you're someone who gears into learning while working, you wouldn't want to be in a call center, because you will only learn one thing: to provide customer service. And that's the only one product that you will be supporting for. So if you want to improve your education, or at least your general knowledge when it comes to everything, or you want to develop personal skills and business skills, then you would want to job hop. So you'd go to one center to another, and that's what I mean, that's how I did it. And eventually I got tired doing it, so I went fully remote, and built what I've learned from the remote work. Yeah.
And very, very interesting. And what's your like looking at comparison of then and now? So when you're working in the call centers versus now, just what, like a snapshot of, maybe not to say what your wages are or anything like that, but just like comparatively, what's your like standard of living now, holiday or time off work, like genuine time off work, and time with your family, or doing things that you enjoy doing and having time for hobbies, or anything like that. So what's changed in those sorts of aspects from working for a typical call center to working with Georges, which Georges, I think you are fantastic. I don't think you are an exception, something that's like completely, it's not like a Google zero work policy where you just do what you want. It's like a standard sort of office.
Yes.
What anyone in the UK would. You're very generous, but it's not extreme by any means. So it's very what most people would accept as a normal sort of UK based benefits and wages. Yeah,
correct.
So what for you, Grace, has that meant?
Oh, it's way too different, Steve. I could still remember in the call centers we had this when you join, you're onboarded, and then you get to hear all of the human resource saying that we have an open door policy. But no one stepped into that door that they said is an open door to just discuss whatever your problem is. But no one stepped in, and no one would even dare, because it's somehow very intimidating to get into that room. So, but right now, when there's something wrong, I mean, when you're working remotely, and you feel, or if I feel that this is not something that I would want to do, or I don't like how this is being done, someone would listen. I think with London Executive, everyone is being heard. So whatever we think would be helpful, or if we don't, I mean, if this is not for, I mean, especially the know it, hate it, like it thing, we put everything that we hate there, just so we don't get. I mean, not just like we don't. I mean, we. I'm not saying that we don't want to accept it. It's just that it's not the best. That, I mean, we're not that the best for that specific kind of task. So we don't want to meddle, because there's someone else in the team that can do it, and
Much
way
better.
Yes, way better. So when that, I mean, when I was filling that form out, I was already feeling like, oh, this is fun, because I'm not I'm not going to be forced to do something that I could not, even if there's training, because I would not be able to understand it anyway. It's just a waste of time training someone that's not interested to for that specific task. So the difference when it comes to communication by say director or the CEO, not because this is just a very small business, but it's how we can relay whatever what we think or what we feel like saying. Especially there's a one-to-one meeting, I get the chance to tell how I feel about workload, about everything, even family, whatever under the sun. I have that 10 minutes to tell George what I needed to say, just so my week is complete when I get that meeting, that part of the week. So it we didn't have that in the corporate, or I mean the call center. So it's just, I mean, there's a one-to-one, I mean, there's a coaching in the call center, but because maybe you're not very, I mean, you're not doing well with your work. That's mostly how coaching starts. And it wasn't very, I mean, it wasn't a very kind environment, I would say.
What about the holidays?
Yeah, what about your
Oh,
family, like family life and social, and what's changed there? Is it better, worse, or the same?
the family life is way, I mean, right now is way better. I have the freedom to choose what holidays I can take. So what has been agreed, like if it's the UK holiday, I can take it or not, and I can just use it from another time that I'd want to use it. And it's very beneficial because it's also a quiet time for me. So when everyone is away, the UK team is away, I can just be me and do everything that I needed. And I get so very productive. And when I do need my holiday, I would take it. And especially if it's something very important, I have it ready. Like, I mean, in the call center environment, you would have to ask for about a month prior, and sometimes it wouldn't be even approved. You will still you will be asked why you're going on leave. And now I'm not being asked anything why I'm taking it. It's because I mean, it has become a right, not a privilege anymore. But for George, he allows us to take it whenever we want. And I think for the family, I'm near my family. I don't even have to go somewhere else. I don't have to live in the city to work for a call center. So I get paid like a better wage compared to a local businesses employee. So um not just the benefits, I mean, I still have, I mean, I'm getting the same benefits from a a Philippine call center or a call center. I get the same benefits, but it's way better um having these when I also have the freedom, not just, I mean, a free reign to learn, to develop my skills. And there isn't any, I'm not sure, I mean, I couldn't think of any other aside from the doctors and all those profession, because they are learning continuously. But as, I mean, like me, that I was working as a call center agent, there was no education or a continuous education that was happening. So you have to find it yourself, or you have to do it yourself. You have to educate yourself. And that's what I'm getting now. And it's different, especially when you're working remotely. You will have to be very resourceful, and when you do that, you get to learn as well. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Grace. So okay, cool. What else should we talk about before we wrap up? I noticed something that on my notes from the conversation we had, and that really struck me quite strongly. And this was something you talked about the perception of people that work in many of the jobs in the Philippines. And like, it's so, explain that if you can, Grace. Like, what is it like for you if you work in certain types of jobs? is that looked negatively upon? That's the impression I got. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
The call centers.
Yeah, we talked about the fact that you're working in a call center, you have very little holidays, you're finishing very late, you don't really have, therefore building friendships outside work is very difficult, and people can look quite negatively upon that. Is that something that you've experienced as well?
I did for some time, but I mean, I personally, I guess I'm a little bit of I'm very positive person, so I don't let myself down to whatever whatever life throws at me. But some people are they're not the they couldn't adapt to the way of life that quick, and it's very hard for them, and I can see it. I get to speak to them, and when they say that this is quite difficult for me, and some people would eventually just leave, and you know how I mean what it did to them, like mentally, physically. You'd see that, you would see that, and I guess I was in a better position when it comes to trying to, I mean, when I mean, it's just maybe personally I am very positive into everything, and I don't feel like it's very difficult, but there are so many people that this is just too difficult for them to understand as well. And I am exposed, I mean, I was exposed very early on to, like, a Western type of education, or that kind of stuff. So it's not very new to me, but for some it was very difficult, and I can see that. And it's some of them are having difficult time to cope, for, I mean, about the toxicity in the work that they're doing, and it reflects to the work that they're doing as well. So eventually they'll just move out and stop working, and some would just continue, and some would eventually just some are into, I mean, this is also controversial, but some are being addicted to the drugs, the illegal drugs, or into a very dangerous activities like gambling, some sort of areas, or like vices that people would be get addicted to, because that's how they would try for them to understand what's happening, or it's very difficult.
You mean as coping strategies for the stress?
Yes.
For the stress, yes. I mean, if you think about it, that you work in a toxic environment where this is the irony of it all. So you work in a toxic environment in completely unsociable hours. It's literally, Steve, I mean, you used to be a doctor, that you are on call every single night, no exceptions, for the rest of your life. You start at 9, you hand over at 6 or 7, whatever.
And it's 6 days a week as well.
6 days a week.
Yes.
6 days a week.
It's just, yeah, because I wanted to just loop back, because my understanding was just when you were saying it's very similar, and maybe misunderstood, but Grace, like before you mentioned about it being the benefits are similar and the working conditions are similar, like, and maybe that's not what you intended, because my understanding was it was quite different. And for my,
I think what you said by similar is, I think the health insurance benefits, that sort of thing. Am I correct, Grace?
Yes, that sort of thing, and including the 13th month pay. The reason why I say this is because for remote workers don't get the same, all the same. Like, it depends on how the organization would provide the benefits. So I'm not even expecting anything, because it's not, I mean, we're not, I mean, London Executive is not obliged to provide all of these. So when I started, I'm not expecting anything, including the 13th month pay or the health benefits. But when that was provided, I can feel that, but it is way better, because I'm being given that, because even though it's not what do you call this? I mean, the London Executive is not obliged to to provide that, but I'm still receiving that. So I'd say the benefits I'm getting is now the same. It's just that how I use it now is different. I mean, how I'm enjoying it is different. Yeah.
Because Steve, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, when you do all these night shifts as a doctor, and you know, I mean, you know, hospitals are very stressful, you know, this is life or death, and you work at night, and you come back the next day, but you know, society looks at you and says, here's a doctor, you know, they appreciate
Put
you.
it with me being grouchy in the mornings or the
They appreciate you. But then, you know, on the other hand, society in the Philippines, although these people in the call centers get paid more money, provide this money to their families, they're not being admired by society.
Not everyone understands.
How does society, Grace, look at people if you tell them, it's not a sort of a badge of honor to say that I work in a call center?
That's true. I mean, it's not when, you know, the elderly would want their children to get the degree, get the corporate job, especially, you know, the local corporate jobs. But when you say that you work in a call center, everyone would say, what is even a call center? They don't even know what it is. And when you tell them that you support people or you help people from a different country to fix this and to fix that, they don't even understand the feeling that we get when we are able to help people. And especially the call centers are and sometimes you know, we're called promiscuous people because we work at night. You know, it's very difficult getting all of those comments. But I guess now it's a little bit it's slowly being accepted because there are really a lot of people that are being, I mean, that were able to um, provide for the families because of the proper or the pay that is way above the average or the minimum in the Philippines. And especially that it's still, I mean, because not everyone can do it, even though English is our second language. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone has the heart to be trained in that specific environment. So it's slowly, I guess, but I hope it will be accepted.
Grace, you touched on something, and maybe we can just sort of come to sort of a natural close after this, but it's something that I thought was very important to acknowledge, and that's, you just mentioned there that I know you said some negative things about working in the call center and the perception that people may have of you and the working conditions and the relatively low pay compared to some other opportunities like working as a virtual assistant or whatever label you want to give a remote worker. But what those call centers are doing is providing regular income at a rate far higher than people could get anywhere else. And so to me, that is forcing people, by the sounds of it, it's we're going right back to the beginning conversation about you taking advantage for a better, I can't think of a better word, but taking advantage of the fact that people desperately need work, desperately need regular income to be able to put food on the table, support their families. And so therefore these big conglomerates can come in and set up really quite not great working environments, and people will flood to them because they need it.
That is
and I
true.
think that one of the things that, from speaking to my staff, who all, I think, or most of them have worked in call centers over the time, especially a couple of my long-term staff, is that the difference, and you've alluded to this, but the difference for them, their mental health, the time, like you said before, the time actually they get to spend with their families because they're able to live at home or live near home, or, you know, that's a choice that they now have. So even if the money was the same, even if they still had to work 6 days a week, and even if it was overnight, it's still, for many people who have families, especially, I think, a really it's to be able to have the choice, and for us to be able to provide that choice, and, you know, if we're nice people, do it generously, then I think that's a pretty cool thing. The more I
It
learn
is.
about stuff, the more I'm happy that this is the way I went and the path I chose. And I think it's what you were saying before, Georges, about.
And the number one thing is that it has become the second most what do you call it, GDP generating in the Philippines, because first it's service. I mean, our overseas foreign workers, because of the remittances, and now it's the call centers. But because of the work from home, I mean the remote work that is basically directly being paid to the employee, not to companies first and then to the employee. No, it appears to be like a remittance. So it goes back to, it goes back to the country as well. So
Yeah.
it's not that
There's
bad.
no middleman, so to speak.
Yes. No. Yes.
Yeah, and
Correct.
well, indirectly, and the government should, if people pay the taxes and stuff like that, then it should actually
Correct.
benefit the country more directly, than rather than most of it being scraped off by who is it, JP
JP Morgan.
Morgan
I'm
and
pretty
the
sure
co-founder.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure weren't founded in the Philippines. Oh,
Yeah.
good, fantastic. Anything else you wanted to add, Georges, before we finish up?
It was, I mean, and somehow, we ended up talking about the IT park and not so much about, what it was like being with your team, over a very strenuous and fully packed schedule, doing everything from, whale sharks to, it was unbelievable. It was, back to this IT park, back to these call centers. The irony of it all was the room that they gave me in the same hotel that Grace and the rest of the team were in. It was on the 6th floor, and they gave me a corner one. And it's what I shared with you, Steve. My direct view on both windows were the call centers. Now that night, we had to get up at 4 a.m. No, not 4 a.m. 4 a.m. We had to leave the hotel because we were going. But then we left at 3 because Chris goes to me, "Are you up?" I was like, "Yes." But the reason why I was up was not for a good reason. So I was looking at, at these call centers, and there I was. I'm like, I have the privilege of being able to sleep normal hours, whilst they don't, or at least they don't know that they can. And that really troubled me and affected me. So whoever was awake on that bus trip on our way, to see the whale sharks, I was just saying, we can do something about it. And just like, well, what can we do? I'm like, well, even if it means just one more person, an 18 player, taking them out from there, giving them an incredible different quality of life where they don't have to work, throughout the night. Because if you work for a UK company, it's 4 p.m. till 1 a.m. I'm a late bird, so 1 a.m. is kind of the time that I go to bed.
Yeah.
To the benefits, to the learning experience and everything. That's a very, very important why we actually want to continue keep growing in the Philippines. It's not a coincidence that there's 5 of us there. I'll definitely see them again next year. I mean, they're already planning, let's do that, let's do this. But ultimately, it's how well we have bonded together on the same values that we work together, how we're all eager to learn. On a Saturday, yesterday, I get a message from a team member of mine. And what does she send me? A picture of the Profit First book. She goes, "I just want to say thank you. I didn't buy it for her. She bought it for herself. I just talked about it." I don't remember the last time I had somebody in my team in the UK that I talked about something and they took a picture of the book that I was referring to say thank you for letting me know about this book.
I've had exactly the same experience with someone from the Philippines.
Must be the water, the rice, or the air.
Fantastic. And on that, I think we should wrap it up. Thank you so much to both of you for today. I was excited about having this conversation with you and sharing some of your experiences, and I wasn't let down. So thank you both.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll speak again. Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye now.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.